Hello, my chaotic listeners. I'm your host, Bayleigh Koch, and you're listening to Clinically Chaotic, the podcast where we dive into life's crazy ride, from the perfect moments to the downright messy ones. I may not be a doctor, but trust me, I've earned my credibility from a life full of wild experiences and lessons learned. Hi guys, so today I'm going to be talking about my wisdom teeth removal story and how it was very complicated compared to a lot of the friends that I have and their experiences, especially because the complications stemmed from something other than the most typical complication of dry socket. To begin, I went to my dentist office and they referred me to their sister clinic that performs surgeries for extractions of teeth. It was okay, but upon the consultation, they told me that I would not be asleep for the procedure and that I would be just under local anesthesia. I explained this to my parents and I was like, hey, I really don't want to go to this place where I'm not going to be asleep. I'm a very anxious person, and so being awake for a procedure this severe did not sound appealing to me at all. I really would have preferred to be asleep. My parents didn't go with me to the consultation because I am an adult, and they were like, no, like I think you're just misunderstanding. You'll definitely be asleep because we've never heard of somebody not being asleep. Anyway, I go to the day of surgery. My dad takes me to this appointment. I am a basket case of nerves. They provided me with a anti-anxiety medication, took that, and I felt okay. Sat down in the chair. My dad came back with me. The dentist explained what he was going to be doing, and my dad very quickly looked at me and was like, oh, hey, you were right. You're not going to be asleep. And I was like, yeah, I told you. I didn't want to do this here because I'm not going to be asleep and I'm going to be awake for this just under local anesthesia. So they put the IV in with the drugs and they start the procedure. I am awake the entire time. I can feel the pressure. I can hear every little noise. And while I was kind of like hazy because of the drugs, I was still very, very aware of my surroundings. I laid there shaking and crying the entire time, and the dental assistant literally had to like rub my arm the whole time and just kept telling me, it's okay, it's gonna be over soon. The dentist, he was listening to Drake, he was rapping away, and I was just laying there sobbing. It was the most traumatic experience, one of the most traumatic experiences that I have ever encountered, especially medically. So I get out, my dad comes back, and he is like, whoa, like, are you okay? And I am just inconsolable. I cannot stop crying. I'm so overstimulated. I could hear every little sound. I could feel all of the pressure. It was just so like scary, and I didn't like it at all. And so we get into the car and I'm crying, and my dad had to stop and pick something up, and I was like, can I go inside with you? Considering how I looked, I had gauze stuffed full of like in my cheeks. I looked like a chipmunk. I was a blubbering mess still. He was like, no, you need to stay in the car. Mind you, I am still very drugged up. And I honestly feel like the drugs were more effective after I was done with the surgery than they were while I was under surgery. And so I'm just in this truck sobbing. I'm like, he hates me. He doesn't want me. He's embarrassed to be seen in public with me, which if I were him and in his shoes, I would have been embarrassed to be seen in public with me as well. So we go and he takes me home. My boyfriend went to the store and got me some groceries. I napped. He came over to my parents' house because I stayed with them overnight since you have to be like kind of under observation for the first 24 hours. And so he came over It was just a huge mess. I didn't like it at all, but I was like, okay, it's over, it's done. Everything is going to be smooth sailing now. Wrong. So upon being sent home, they sent me home with a packet full of instructions for the medications that they sent me home with. They sent me home with antibiotics, a steroid, and then pain pills so that it would not only manage the pain, but also prevent any sort of infection from occurring. I read the instructions, I followed it to a T, I took the medication like I was supposed to. Very quickly, of night, like 2 or 3, I started getting really intense stomach pain. Let me just preface by saying I'm an IBS girly. I have tummy issues galore. I can't eat gluten or dairy. So I have had my fair share of stomach cramps. These were some of the worst stomach cramps I have ever had in my life. I think they are the worst stomach cramps I have ever had in my life. And I was curled up in a fetal position, sobbing. So this is now New Year's Eve, and we went out to go get my boyfriend some food because I couldn't eat any food. And so we went to my parents' house because they were having a party. And then he was like, well, we're already out. Can we stop at my family's? Once we got to his family's, I was like, I'm going to either throw up or pass out. I just felt so miserable. Something was wrong. Upon hearing this, his family, who work in the medical field, they were like, stop taking the steroid. It's not doing anything to benefit you. It's just to try and prevent the swelling. But as long as you're taking the other medications that they gave you, like the Tylenol, the ibuprofen, it should counteract it. And you should be fine. You shouldn't need to take the steroids. So I listened to this advice, didn't take them. By the next day, I felt a lot better. But then the pain from my mouth started. While this was all happening, when I was on the steroid, my mouth pain was almost non-existent. Was it uncomfortable? Yes. But it was more sore than anything, and it was very, very mild. Once I stopped taking the steroid, the pain completely switched to my mouth. I was in so much pain to the point where I could not sleep, and the only thing that would help relieve this pain even a little bit was taking super hot water, holding it in my mouth, and once it got even lukewarm, I'd have to repeat the process. It was miserable, and I could not stop crying. I probably shed more tears within this time frame than I have in my 22 years of life. It was miserable. I didn't know what to do. I thought something was wrong. So I called the doctor. I was like, hey, or the dentist, and I was like, hey, I need help. Something is wrong. The dentist did not handle this well at all. It was to the point where he handled it so poorly that I had to then call my actual dentist and beg him to see me. His response was just very inappropriate, and it didn't help at all. So I went to my dentist, and he pretty much told me that my only solution that I could do was to take the steroid again, but he didn't know why I was having the reactions that I was having, but that there could potentially be an infection starting. But it was also too early to tell that. So my only option was to be in miserable mouth pain, where I can only hold super hot water in my mouth, and that's the only way I get relief, or be in so much pain in your stomach that you can barely make it out of bed, you can't move, and you are just miserable. And again, crying in a fetal position. It's like one of those games of Would You Rather, and both options are the absolute worst options, like they were spawned from Satan himself. It was a nightmare. Now I'm sure you're wondering, Bayleigh, what option did you pick here? Because both seem terrible. Yeah, they were terrible, but I picked the one that I knew I could maybe handle a little bit more, and I went with the steroids again so that the stomach pain, because like I said, I'm an IBS girly. I've dealt with my fair share of stomach pain. I was like, you know what? I can handle that more than mouth pain and not being able to eat. So I started taking these again, and it was to the point where I was bedridden for 11 days. I couldn't walk. I was waddling. I was curled up in a fetal position, and it was so bad that the pain started going from my stomach to my back, and it was just a miserable experience. I ended up having somebody come to my home and give me a IV because I was so dehydrated. I was just every aspect of my life, health-wise, just was not good. My blood sugar was low all the time because I couldn't eat foods except sweet potato. I also had to eat regularly enough for these, otherwise they would make the stomach pain worse with these medications. But I could barely eat anything except sweet potatoes, bananas, and applesauce. Because like I said, I can't have gluten or dairy. So having stuff like yogurt and ice cream wasn't feasible. Is there dairy-free options? Yes. But that it just wasn't in my mindset at the time. I had other things to worry about. So I got the IV. My dad had come over because we were supposed to go on a family vacation because this was over winter break. And he was like, yeah, there's no way you're making it out of town. And I was like, yeah, no, there's not. And he was very concerned as a parent. He was like, I don't think I've ever seen you look this unwell and just like unhealthy. Because I like I said, I couldn't eat much, so I was losing a bunch of weight. I couldn't sleep because I was crying so much in pain. It was just a very miserable time. And compared to my peers who had really easy experiences and were eating really well within a couple of days, I was having a time from hell. Well, that concludes my story time of getting my wisdom teeth out and the experience that it was. So some tips that I have for you guys after my awful experience is make sure that you have somebody or multiple people who are able to take care of you if you have complications. I don't know what I would have done without my parents' help and without my boyfriend's help for going and getting groceries for me and making food for me and just helping me around the house because I was so bedridden and miserable because of the complications that I had from the medications. Complications of medications. That was a mouthful. Also, make sure that you're dressing comfortably and you have a lot of clothes prepared that you can just be comfortable in, because whether you have a good experience or a bad experience, being comfortable in this scenario, I think, makes a big difference. Also prepare for swelling. Make sure that you have ice packs ready. That was one thing that I was very grateful about. I did not swell bad because I was so strict about the ice, and really just make sure that you are having a lot of ice time on and off. And then also my dentist said to use heat as well. So kind of flip-flop and take turns with those. And then finally, just take it easy. Make sure that you have a plan. Also, make sure you have a lot of good snacks. And if you're able to eat gluten and dairy, make sure that you have a lot of ice cream and popsicles and just foods that you know you're going to be able to enjoy and not get sick of if you have complications. Unfortunately, that's a wrap for this week's episode. Join us next time for more chaotic moments, and be sure to follow us for more chaotic content on Instagram at Clinically Chaotic the Podcast, or leave us a review. Until next time, stay safe, stay chaotic, and remember, you're never alone in this mess called life. Bye!